one of the great challenges in science and technology is called in the trade linking up wet and dry. And you have in the wet disciplines, the life sciences, those investigations of organisms, the extraordinary advances in biological understanding. But we've also got, with very different origins, the absolute extraordinary surge in IT, in computer power, in ability to handle large data sets, high-performance computing. And the real advances are going to come when we bring wet and dry together. It's something that we do in Britain, and we're very proud of that. And we now move on to our next session, where you'll be hearing from leading players who've played a crucial role in the development of IT. And I'd like to invite Mike Lynch, who created Autonomy, to set off the next session. Mike, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. In the UK, in the areas of information and communications, there's a long list of fundamental innovation which has gone on, built really from our science base, and then as that science base gets to enable new technologies, we see areas such as our creative industries come to the fore in finding ways of using those new technologies to create new and exciting things for us. Now, I'm very lucky today in that I'm joined by three of the liveliest and most interesting people that we could have to discuss this. So we have Vittorio Colao, CEO of Vodafone. We have Warren East, CEO of Arm, and Sir Martin Sorrell, CEO of WPP. Now, when one talks about innovation based on information technology, it's important to understand that innovation out of the UK can affect all industries. So whether you're Tesco's using these kind of technologies to optimize retail, or your Rolls-Royce using the most advanced algorithms to keep your engines in tip-top condition, this is permeating through all areas. So what we've got today are three slightly different views coming from different angles on innovation out of the UK. So we're going to start with Vittorio. Now, Vittorio, there are many interesting facts about him. He's actually the son of an Italian policeman. And any of you that have just flown in for this conference in the last day or two will have noticed that the weather in Britain is amazing. And of course, it's always like this. So that's why we've managed to get him from Italy to come to England and do this. As well as that, we also have the Great Science Place. So if you could welcome Vittorio to come up here for me. So, Vittorio, tell us about your view of innovation in the UK.
Innovation in the UK is good. It's, again, of course, I have to reflect the business I'm in. I see my business as a business which will enable innovation. Of course, we bring innovation together with some of the great technology companies that are represented here today. But most importantly, we enable, especially now, third-party innovation. And again, I don't need to talk to you, especially. But what's happening in the world with the arrival of ubiquitous, fast data broadbands and the possibility to connect humans and things, we really are opening to a new way of solving problems. And I really want to stress this. This morning I provoked the governors with something. Now I'm going to make another provocation. I propose that we stop saying that we live in challenging times, because saying that we live in challenging times sounds like, oh my God, will I make it? We live in times of challenges, which is a different thing. It's a very different thing. Again, English is not my native language, but in my language it would mean a different thing. It means that we have challenges, but the challenges can be positively addressed through technology. And talking about mobile data and the ubiquitous technology, I really believe that some of the challenges that the world has now, which at the end of the day are spreading information and education in an equitable way and in a fast way, emerging markets and mature markets. It's about allocating resources in an efficient way. We cannot continue to waste time, fuel, land, food, we need to have better food efficiency. All these things can be really addressed in a very efficient way through the fact that everybody at a very low cost can access our technology. Now, why I think UK is a great environment, you know, I can mention what we do. I mean, we do certain things, but many things are actually done by third parties, entrepreneurs who work with us. We are in emerging markets addressing mobile health, for example. And sometimes it's very simple stuff. It's just enabling somebody who has a great inventory management solution to make sure that malaria or antiretroviral medicines are at the right time in the right place. Sometimes it's just providing information to health workers or to farmers, or to give farmers the opportunity to get better yield, or to give the fishermen of Kerala the opportunity to sell the fish when it's still on the boat, which means 4% lower prices, 6% lower waste, 8% higher revenues. These are things that we don't do ourselves, but we work with others and we with others. In mature markets, it's much more about clearly using efficiently energy, using efficiently commuting time and transport. It's a lot of things that we don't do ourselves, but we enable others to do. And why the UK is good, I think the UK is a great place from our point of view for 3 reasons. And I was told to be short, so I'm closing here. And then, first, because, as it was said, you know, in the other context, fantastic universities and fantastic minds, you know. People who really develop great solutions and have really science, you know, at their fingertips. Second, which is very important, a relatively light administrative environment. I know it's not perfect, and to be honest, it is not perfect. But if I compare it to the rest of Europe, it's much better. So, great place if you are a young entrepreneur, if you are somebody with science on the fingertips, to try to put it into a legal system. And third, of course, it's a good legal system. And so the cooperation between a large company like ours and a smaller entrepreneur is much more reassuring for the small entrepreneur, because and I think you gave a fantastic example in your healthcare thing, because it's a reassuring thing you can really do. So the 3 things together, competencies in the UK, good, relatively good administrative system, and legal system, actually make this cooperation between the powerful networks that now we are developing everywhere and the solutions that come from super bright and super entrepreneurial people really possible. This is true in the UK. I have to say, and I want to say it, India is another place where this is actually possible and very good. There are some African countries that can have that ambition. They're not there yet, but they could get there. And of course, the US. We know the US is... but again, I really say, let's stop talking about challenging times. These are times of challenges. But we have great champions, entrepreneurial champions, that can help face these challenges.
Well, I hope you keep delivering that enabling layer for those of us in the entrepreneurial side and software to actually keep coming up with things. And every time you deliver another layer of service, then the creativity that comes about and creating the ideas is absolutely phenomenal. Now, another area that selfishly in software, absolutely vital for us in terms of technology moving forward is processor power. And we're very fortunate today to have Warren East, who's the CEO of ARM. Without realizing it, you probably all own devices that have got ARM-designed chips in it. And I think it's fair to say now that ARM can claim to be the premier processor technology in the world. Started out of a Cambridge company, part of the Cambridge cluster, from a spin-off of a startup, all the way to a world-class company. So please join me in welcoming Warren East from ARM.
Thank you, Mike.
Vittorio is giving us connectivity.
Yeah.
You're doing an amazing job in delivering the thinking power, the processing. Tell us a little bit about the innovation there and your experience in the UK, and perhaps explain a little bit more about ARM's model, because it's a little bit different and perhaps relevant to the UK.
I will. I'll start off with that, and I'll start off on that point, actually, our business. We're described as a chip company, but we don't make any chips. We design the brains of silicon chips that go into products like phones, like televisions, and so on. And we license those designs to semiconductor companies, sell them licenses. They incorporate the designs into the chips. And that way, we can achieve, through collaboration, tremendous leverage. And 2,500 people based out of Cambridge in the UK can deliver through 300-odd semiconductor companies around the world, 8 billion chips last year. That is about 12% of the entire semiconductor revenue of the world last year, and about a third of the world's microprocessors. And it's that business model which enables us to have that tremendous reach and that tremendous breadth too in terms of application space. So although when ARM was introduced and mentioned this morning, we talked about mobile phones, actually you'll find ARM technology in all sorts of electronic devices, computers, tablets, TVs, etc. The infrastructure that enables these products to communicate with each other around the internet. And indeed in everything really from tiny little sensors to smart meters right up to supercomputers. And ARM is the brain that sits inside these things. So we're headquartered in the UK, but actually we operate all around the world, and we work with all the global leading technology brands. So Google, Cisco were here this morning, and companies like Samsung, companies like TSMC, Autonomy, Huawei, etc. And it's interesting the comment in the previous session about innovation, about training and collaboration, because that's very much at the heart of the way in which we do business as well. Just to sort of show a few examples of what we do with collaboration in the UK, we have a little video as well, I think, if we can just play that now.
Our company develops the N-Light range of advanced lighting control technologies. Our innovative solutions allow users to intelligently manage and control their lighting installations at the same time as dramatically reducing their energy consumption. Using ARM technology is enabling us to develop a cost-effective way to bring ageing street lighting installations into the 21st century.
So Newell's technology is enabling the use of TV white space, and we have a brand new architecture and implementation that will transform wide area wireless communication. We selected ARM because it's a perfect fit for the class of applications I've just described.
So Amantis is developing products which control the switching of very high power transistors which are used in high reliability applications. So ARM is the intelligence that we're putting into the heart of the power electronic system. What's attractive to us about ARM is, first of all, it's a low power microprocessor. We have an industry which has very rigorous supply chain requirements, so we have a wide range of suppliers.
Using ARM technology enables us to provide exactly what the street lighting marketplace needs today. Highly energy efficient technology with sophisticated management and control at a highly competitive price point.
So what ARM technology gives us is, first of all, low power, which is important. We don't want to waste any power in the power switching process. We have great tool support, so that means we can really shorten our development times. The intelligence at this point in the system really enables us and our customers to innovate in the whole power conversion process.
ARM's leadership within the world of embedded low power and low cost design is the natural partner for Newell as the number of connections increases from the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands to the millions, and indeed the tens of billions.
So a bit of blatant commercialism there, I'm sorry. But I think the theme there, few themes. It's collaboration. They're using our technology. We're not developing the system that enables huge savings in the amount of power consumed by those street lights. Lighting, by the way, accounts for about 17% of the electricity that we generate on the planet. And so, you know, if you can make that a lot more efficient, you can save a lot of power. So we work in conjunction with these companies. I think the other theme there is about low power. And as we look at digital electronics and the guys who are sat here this morning talking about more services provided through technology, huge quantities of data are going to be generated. And IT currently accounts for about 17% of the power used, electricity generated in the world. And people are estimating some 20-fold increase in the amount of data that's going to be generated over the next 5 to 10 years. And if we don't find more power-efficient ways of processing that data, we're going to have to generate a lot more electricity. Otherwise, all these great services are not actually going to be deliverable. So those two themes. And as we look forward, then I think we will crack these problems. Technology will become a slave to us and genuinely help us with some of the challenges that we talked about a moment or two ago with healthcare, some of the challenges that I alluded to in terms of energy. And as an engineer, I'll feel a lot better to see technology working for us rather than against us.
Thanks very much. Now that brings us on, now that we've got processor power and connectivity to software, I'm going to move over here because I'm going to recklessly try and show you some things. My background was originally as an academic, and I think that's very important to understand about the UK, in that it's the science base in the UK which really enables a lot of these things like Arm and Vodafone to be successful and do research here. And then the outcome of that research can move on to areas such as the creative industries and areas such as Martin's going to talk to us about in a minute. Now, when I started as an academic, it was fundamental research that I was doing. And it was part of the Cambridge cluster. And there you see companies like Arm and Autonomy spin up. Autonomy grew and became the second largest software acquisition of all time. Now, for those of you that are asking why invest in the UK, well, if you'd invested as a venture capitalist in Autonomy, you made one of the highest returns in history. You made 1,000 times return if you were there at the beginning. Even as a public investor, you made a 7,000% return. And the reason we could do that was the fundamental different nature of the technology that we actually have because of the science base. Another interesting aspect is I sit on the board of the BBC. And what I see in the UK is incredible strength in the creative industries. And of course, what we're seeing now is a melding of technology and the creative industries. So if you're on your smartphone and you're connected through Vodafone and the data's being processed by an ARM processor and going through Autonomy software, the actual content experience is becoming very important, and that's part of the UK's fundamental abilities in the creative industries, where, for example, we export formats all over the world. So I think that I agree with Vittorio in that we're about to go through a period of unprecedented change. And when you work in the technology world, unprecedented change is actually the same as unprecedented opportunity. We're seeing enabling technologies. Every time that Warren's company produced twice as much processor power, it produces more and more opportunities for what can be done. The way in which mobile is going to change things, we heard Eric Schmidt really say that in terms of smartphones, we're just at the beginning. The ability to have information in context with what you're actually doing at any point of time is a fundamental change to how people are going to use information. We've already seen memory become an enabler. We don't worry about having very large data sets. And then there are some things which are a little bit more subtle. On the software level, the ability of computers to actually understand what the information means has taken a massive step forward. And this has come out of work at places like Cambridge in the UK and Imperial in the UK, so that computers can now listen to something and understand what it means, or see something understand what it means, or read something and understand what it means. And the UK leads this field. What you may be surprised to know is that most of the major software companies of the world, products rely on UK technology inside them to allow the computer to actually understand the content. So all of the large, for example, American software companies rely fundamentally on UK technology to do those things. And now we're moving into a realm where we can handle massive amounts of data, so-called big data, and we can start to see insights that we couldn't see before. Ways in which people are doing things are changing. So the idea of cloud computing, where the information doesn't stay on the device but is available all the time, fundamentally changing the whole way in which we're thinking about IT. Social media. Social media is a fascinating phenomenon. It's about people being enabled through technology. And one of the interesting things in my world is that we track information. We look at information all over the world every day. And what's happening now is for under 25-year-olds, the actual words they're using are completely different. And if I was to take an audience like this, I could give you a long list of words that you would have no idea what they mean. But if I was addressing a conference of under 25-year-olds, everyone would know what they mean. So what you've got is an incredibly new dynamic form in social media. But as Eric said this morning, we haven't really seen anything yet. So what we're talking about now is a complete change in how we use information. So if you think about the beginning of the internet, what you used to do was perhaps sit in your bedroom, you had a laptop computer, you typed words, you got words back as answers, and you reiterated what you were doing. The new generation of the internet world is going to look completely different. It's going to be a lot more visual. It's going to be a lot less based on words. Words are a relatively recent innovation in how humans use information. So visual technology, because computers can see and hear. It's going to be about being in context, about being where you are. And every time that we see these innovative enablers happen, we can move forward. And the most important thing is it's going to be in context. So objects are going to become part of this. And when we take work like you saw with Newell, another Cambridge company up there, around the Internet of Things, where all objects become part of the internet, you can see that we're really in a large change. Now, if I've got my assistant here, what I'm going to do now is just show you, just so that you can envisage this, an example. So what I have here is a very standard smartphone. If we could put this on the screen, so you can see there, it's just got its camera. This is an ARM-based smartphone. It's running with Vodafone. Now, if I can get my assistant here, what this can do is recognize 500,000 objects. And when it recognizes them, so for example, we take a piece of advertising here, what it can do is take that object and make it come to life. So what you're seeing now is an inanimate object visually being recognized and being replaced with a virtual object. And so although there's nothing special about that poster, there's no barcode or QR code or anything, I could now press my phone and buy tickets to that film. The inanimate world has become interactive. And we can just, we're not typing any search engine terms. We showed a different picture that, of the 500,000, so a rather famous one here. And again, as soon as it sees that, it can recognize it, and it can interact with it in some way. So, for example, the Mona Lisa starts to talk. And you can see that the ways in which you're going to think about social media, content, search engines, URLs, objects, buying things, are all going to change. We have another bit of advertising here, for example, Harry Potter. Well, again, as that happens, and of course, it's all about the object being in context. So as Vanessa moves it, luckily, thanks to Warren's company, there's enough processing power for the computer to keep its view of the object in place, and we see everything happen. So, thank you very much, Vanessa. So what I wanted to do really was just open your mind to the fact that although we think we've gone through a great change with the internet, we are really just at the beginning. And the fundamental science, which is understood in the UK in mathematics with places like the Newton Institute in the UK, and the technology clusters around Shoreditch, Cambridge, and Imperial, are really fundamental abilities that you can invest in and you can harness to actually move things forward. So thank you very much. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Sir Martin Sorrell, who's going to talk about the new ways in which communication happens when you have these enablers.
Thank you, Mike. We have to continue that discussion we had before you sold Autonomy to HP on how we can apply that technology to advertising. I just want to pick up on Vittorio's comment about challenging times and challenges, and might use the word opportunity. And we look at the world as being full of opportunities. I mean, those GMP statistics that came out last night, which everybody's depressed about, even if it's minus 0.7, there are some parts of the economy that are growing at 1, 2, or 3, and some that might be contracting at 1, 2, or 3. And that's the way that we look at life in some of these challenging times or challenges. We see them as opportunities, basically, which if you don't do anything about them will become threats. So at WPP, what do we do? Well, our bread and butter is the relationship between consumers and companies or brands and products and services. And clearly we're seeing technology profoundly change that relationship. Technology actually accounts in a digital form now for about, it's about $5 billion of our $17 billion of revenue this year. It'll be around 30%. And recently we added to our digital armory, AKQA, which is a very well-known company here based in the UK with about 1,200 staff, and that adds to the 160,000 that we have around the world in 108 countries. Now, you haven't seen any slides, so I'm going to change that a little bit and just highlight 5 things. The first is, despite what you might think, the media day is expanding for consumers. You can see here that over the last 5 or 6 years, the media day has expanded quite significantly. But there are some big changes taking place within that. And the print day, I don't want to depress any legacy media owners in the audience or outside the audience, but the simple fact is that legacy print is on the decline. And you can look at that in terms of copies or ad share, that's the share that print has of advertising, and it is in steep decline and is liable to continue to be so. So the world actually is now dominated by TV in its legacy forms, the free-to-air. We'll be watching the Olympics on NBC in a free-to-air form, but we'll also be watching it digitally. This is probably the first digital Olympic Games that we'll have witnessed, but it's dominated by TV in its old form and its new form, and by digital. And actually, if you tot it up now, about 3/4 of what media we consume as consumers, and we are in advance, actually, consumers are in advance of companies in terms of what they do, as I'll come on to in a second. About 3/4 actually is accounted for by TV and digital. And this is actually, I think, the most powerful thing that those of you who are involved in assessing what a media budget should be and how it should be deployed, this is the most powerful slide, I think, and most important one. And there are 2 big basic discontinuities. On the left-hand side, you can see the amount of time that consumers, that we, you and I, spend on media. So, for example, on print, we spend about 7% of our time. And these are US numbers, but they apply pretty much around the world, even in the faster growth markets. What some people call the emerging markets, I call the faster growth markets. About 7% is in print, but 25% is invested and spent by our clients together with us, because we're complicit. We manage a media book of about $75 billion around the world. About 25% is spent on print. So there is still this discontinuity that has to change over time. Radio is about right. TV is about right. And the internet and mobile, if you put the 2 together, we as consumers are spending about 1/3 of our time online or on mobile. And yet we're only spending about 20% of our budgets, a little over, on internet and mobile. So that has to change and is becoming increasingly important. And the last slide is that there's very limited slowdown predicted actually in digital. If you look at digital historically, from 6 to 11, it grew at about 18% compound. If you look at it 11 to 16, you see similar growth rates. Now, what does this mean for us? Well, it's first the obvious one, and Mike mentioned it, which is the quantum change that we've seen in social media, the way that consumers communicate with business. Consumers now expect very direct, very personalized, live interaction with the companies that they deal with. And they increasingly judge companies, you and I trying to run companies, on the qualities of those interactions. A recent study on UK assessed brands, customer service, purely on social media. John Lewis, which is a leading retail department store here, came top, and their median response time to a tweet, for example, was 16 minutes. Groupon, also a very high scorer, responded to 88% of consumers' comments on Facebook. And companies need to transform their customer service, their PR, their media functions to live up to these new expectations. That's the first thing. The second thing is technology is increasingly fused with the product in order to take brands seamlessly into consumers' lives and their lifestyles. And products are no longer inanimate objects. They're connected to us and indeed connected to each other. The Nike Plus ecosystem, a relevant example as we're talking about the Olympics, is an extremely good example. The products such as footwear and the Fuel Band, an arm bracelet which measures your physical activity or lack of it, blends seamlessly with the technology. Activity tracking and online training communities in social media. And much of the Nike Plus ecosystem was created actually by that company I mentioned, UKTI, here in the UK. But another good example is J&J's Band-Aid and its use of augmented reality technology, very similar to the kind that Mike demonstrated earlier. Band-Aid wanted to distract children when they have a scrape or a cut. So the new Band-Aid plasters feature pictures of characters from the Muppets, and when you hold an iPhone over the plaster, the pictures come to life, singing and dancing on the screen. And if you'll excuse the second shameless plug, the Band-Aid Muppets were created by J. Walter Thompson, a WPP agency. Finally, the third thing is big data. A lot of chat about big data, but it's a lot of hype. But we are amassing huge quantities of data, and it's not very difficult to do. The exciting part is that we now have the power to process that data almost instantaneously, economically, and on small devices such as mobile phones. And that creates tremendous growth opportunities, which again, if you don't capitalize on them, become threats. McKinsey estimates that the application of big data to personal location data alone has the potential for over $100 billion in revenue to service providers and $700 billion in value to consumers. So big data is changing very much the way that we help our clients reach their consumers, and through platforms that we have, internet buying platforms such as Xaxis, which, for example, has the records anonymously of every one of the 60 million consumers here in the UK. That's in our media management business. We apply that data to improve the effectiveness of online marketers' advertising spending on a real-time basis. So to sum up, I've said that consumers are ahead of companies, and that might be a negative note, but let me finish on what I think is a very positive note. The rapid mass market adoption of technology has created a tremendous growth opportunity, and it will create relationships between people, consumers, and companies, those of us who run companies, which are much more personalized, which are much more human, and last but not least, are much more relevant than before. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin. Now, we have time just for 3 very quick questions that we've had submitted. So, short answers, please. Vittorio, question was, how can mobile technologies act as enabler for innovation and growth elsewhere in the economy? So government's had some very interesting projects around broadband connectivity. Do you think there are equivalent ideas of driving growth through mobile connectivity?
I think that the potential is huge. It's huge as long as we are willing to change the way we run things. I'll give you the example on health. There is an evaluation that, and I'm not talking again about rocket science, that if in the UK the NHS introduced a pervasive monitoring system of patients' conditions through remote data and the type of things that Eric Schmidt was talking about this morning, the annual saving would be £750 million, which corresponds to 90 or 95 doctors per hospital, which means that you can either improve a lot the service of the hospitals or reduce the cost, or probably a combination of both. Moreover, pollution, traffic, smart grids, smart cities. Again, small example that I have in my own little shop. In the Netherlands, at some point, we said, okay, let's try to reduce the carbon footprint of our people through smart management of their commuting mobility daily patterns, through use of a combination of things, some of them, by the way, developed by entrepreneurs, because we don't develop the apps or the solutions, we just give the remote connectivity and the way to optimize them. Now, the result is 25% reduction of the Vodafone employees. So I'm back to my point, because I really, there's the pessimist way of saying, oh, we are in challenging times, and da-da-da, or there's the optimist who says, we are in times of changes, let's look at what we can do. And I really believe that, again, in the UK, we have an opportunity because we have the skills. And I have to say, because this is also a little bit about the UK, we have a government who is, we heard this morning from Cameron's speech, who is willing to push a little bit.
Now, Martin, you have experience in your business worldwide. Do you see how these technologies and opportunities are for consumers, particularly in the developing world, rather than just concentrating on the effect now? Yeah.
Well, we call them fast growing, Mike, because we think it's somewhat insulting, because of these, China has emerged. It's the second largest economy.
I'm thinking more of Africa. So
okay, well, I would say they're faster growing too. Certainly when I look at our business in South Africa or Nigeria, even parts of North Africa, despite the stresses and strains that we see there politically. Anyway, what are the differences? Well, the big difference, and this I know is something that Vittorio and Vodafone focus on a lot, is probably the mobile phenomenon. And if you look at, I know Eric this morning touched on a number of areas: social networks, video, search, display. Those are more the traditional areas of Google's operation. But with the acquisition of Motorola Mobility, it seems to me with the Android platform and the hardware that they now have access to, they have a simply brilliant opportunity to develop the smartphone and the handset in a much more sophisticated way than we've seen. Now, if you look at the differences, let's take India, because we had Minister Sharma here, and Vodafone, obviously Vittorio has, company Vodafone has invested there. There are I think there are 850 million users in India. There are 3 networks, Vittorio's, Airtel and Reliance, which have over 100 million subscribers. If you go to China, China Mobile, we value as the most valuable brand outside America, has 650 million subscribers on its own, growing at, I think it's 5 million a month. I think in India it's still 10 million a month. And in China you have a total of 950 million. If you think about those numbers, it seems to me that obviously mobile is the big opportunity, and smartphone and Android platforms or similar platforms give you the facility to exploit it in a way that we haven't seen in the slow-growing markets. And what you will get is leapfrogging. So what you've got really is mobile being the cheap form of access to the internet, and that is a revolutionary opportunity, certainly not a challenge, but a massive opportunity. The frustrating thing, frankly, from our point of view, and Vittorio and I have talked about this years, and actually Vittorio's predecessors we talked about, Vodafone we talked about this, is the inability for us to get the mobile network operators together. It's a bit like trying to get private equity people together. They're alpha males, and when they're challenged, when they were the locusts they were described in Germany, and they were all worried about that, you couldn't get them together in one room to discuss that issue. And it's a bit the same, but I think now the pressure from companies like Google and others is forcing the network operators to think a little bit more about the advertising opportunities we as agencies have got to try and push.
Which we are trying to exploit together.
That's right. That's right.
I'm afraid in the interest of time, Warren, I have to give you the last question, which is the Blue Skies question. So obviously ARM chips are appearing everything. We saw not only things that we know about tablets and phones, but the work that someone like Newell's doing. If you had to pick biggest unexpected development around these new cheap low-power processors. Have you got a secret one that you can let us all know?
No.
An out there one that we're not expecting?
Then it wouldn't be a secret. I mean, I think, well, earlier this year, we launched a new processor, really, really tiny one. So the whole processor is comparable with the size of a human hair. And this thing will run for about 15 years on a little button cell and has more compute power than the Apollo 11 lunar lander took to the moon in 1969. So I don't actually know what people are going to do with it. But if you imagine that sort of compute power and that sort of power consumption, then I really am excited by this Internet of Things that's coming a little bit after the sort of mobile wave, probably. We're some years away yet, but that Internet of Things is going to be where it's at.
Because now that you've mentioned that, I'm already thinking of things that I could do with it. I'm sure Martin is as well, and I'm sure Vittorio is. So all that remains is for me to thank you. I think it's been a fascinating panel. And if you could join me in thanking them. And big round of applause for our panel.